Punch magazine was a British publication that was known for its use of humor and satire. Punch utilized short poems and cartoons in order to make their points and share their opinions in a way that was easily readable. The magazine's first edition was published on July 17, 1841, and ran for over 160 years until 2002, examining events throughout the Victorian era all the way into the modern age. Punch introduced the term cartoon as we know it today. The original meaning of the word was a preliminary drawing for a work of art, either a painting, fresco, or tapestry, and punch is the reason that we now see a cartoon like the image that's listed on the right. Punch featured cartoons by what can now be considered cartoon legends. In the 1840s and 1850s, Punch was very anti-American. They looked down on America for supporting and defending the institution of slavery. They favored the Northern cause, and they continued to have an anti-slavery stance and were therefore sympathetic to the North. In the 1860s, there was a shift to conservatism, and Punch's opinions began to change. The beginning of this is notably the fall of Fort Sumter and the poem Ode to the North and South. There are a few reasons for the shift in attitude. One is the anti-British tone of Northern press after England's declaration of neutrality. Another is the effectiveness of the Northern blockade and resulting cotton famine. A third is the Trent Affair, which was the removal of 2 Confederate commissioners from a British steamship by the U.S. Navy. And the last is the disapproval of the large number of Irish immigrants that were being enlisted in Union armies. While Punch's views changed over time, they were highly respected and well-known, and their publications were representative of widely held views at the time.
So Punch's agendas in the political cartoons was overall very erratic, maybe because the Civil War itself was very erratic. But one thing that they kept consistent was that they hated slavery. In the 40s and the 50s, their agenda was very anti-American in their cartoons, mainly because they did not understand how the North and the South could live together and still allow slavery and democracy. Here in a picture made by Punch called The Land of Liberty, America is laying down the cat o' nine tails and smoking, and in the middle is slavery with all the shortcomings around it. In the 1950s, the political cartoons take a huge shift in agenda. They go pro-North. Uncle Tom's Cabin grows in popularity, and so England starts reaching out to the North, asking to abolish slavery. Here's some art made. The South is portrayed as a poorly dressed man. He's armed, but here on the right is the North, a well, classy, educated man, and he's rich also. So in the 1960s, their political cartoons take a huge shift in agenda once again, and they go pro-South. Mainly because England declares neutrality, therefore the North gets mad and makes anti-British comments and tones in their press. This agitates the British. The Trent Affair, the illegal capturing of the British ship that had 2 Southern diplomats on there, only makes matters worse. Not only that, but the Northern blockade results in the cotton famine in England. Cotton King here is bound on your right, and therefore their economy is suffering, and they are mad that the North has done this blockade. They go neutral in their agenda with their political cartoons, mainly because they're release surrender. Here they portray in one of their political cartoons the North and the South as American gladiators. In regards to how the American people saw the war and how Punch saw the war, they aligned themselves a lot with the North. They didn't really pay attention with the South. But one thing that they agreed on, the similarity on this, was the abolishment of slavery. Also had some of the biggest differences with the North, and that's because Punch hated Lincoln with a passion. Although the North saw Lincoln as an emancipator, a humanitarian, a statesman, Punch saw him as a dictator. And their mindset were to shift with Lincoln's assassination. They portrayed him as one of the best presidents of the United States.
Political cartoons are just as important as they were during the Civil War, as they express the climate of the time. This exercise was a collaborative effort that delivered awareness on new platforms and provided a new understanding of the Civil War, and also helped establish a clear sentiment of the people and gained a foreign perspective of the war, highlighting issues relevant to English society. Here are a few examples of the political cartoons that were included in Punch magazine during the Civil War. The Civil War answered 2 definitive questions. 1, would there be a United States or a divided country with 2 separate entities? Or, if there was to be a United States, what kind of country would it be? The answers the war gave was that the United States would be one nation without slavery and with a developing system of liberal democratic capitalism. The British magazine Punch had profound influence on the Civil War, as more than 20% of Punch's weekly cartoons focused in whole or in part on the American War. By contrast, the France of Napoleon III, although of great interest, received half as much, and the British domestic scene twice as much. Punch not only reflected, but also shaped the opinion of the British mainstream. Although I realize the picture shown isn't a Punch sketch, the narrator sums up the significance of these political cartoons perfectly. I recommend if you get a chance, click on the link.
So to wrap everything up, we are going to talk about how the editors and the staff writers for the publication kind of changed their opinions over time. Early on throughout the war, as we've seen, or even before the war, they were very anti-slavery, very humanitarian in their methods. Beyond that, it wasn't until about just before the war had started that they would depict both sides as being hypocrites or slaveholders, things like that. Issues such as the blockades of the South, cotton shortages, things like that, the Trent case and all of that kind of caused issues, and the publication pandered towards the British population. It wasn't until the end of the war, after Lincoln had been shot, that they kind of, posted this thing about how great Lincoln was to the masses, and they received a lot of backlash for it. But ultimately, the publications kind of stayed true to its nature, which was the Union were hypocrites, the South were slaveholders, and slavery was terrible, Union using slaves as pawns, things like that. So ultimately, they didn't really waver their opinions too much. It wasn't until, like I said, the day after Lincoln had been shot that they actually did a total 180, in which, the writers came forward and talked about, how they kind of disagreed the entire time with the things the publication released. It was just based on pandering to the